Yeah, I'm. Just give me 1 second. Is it good now?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So,
Over to you, Atul.
yeah, as I said, I mean, we're going to talk about some very basic, simple stuff, and maybe bring a little more context to digital health and all things digital, basically. Less on health and more on digital. So, if you look at this slide, it's a very interesting slide. And it's very interesting, particularly to all of us who are alive today, because this talks about the change that we have seen within our lifetimes itself. So, if you look at analog, example is a newspaper, to digital, that transition probably took, let's say, anywhere between 50 to 100 years, right? And then from the computer coming in and to the age of the internet was probably 10 to 15 years, no more. Because, I mean, I'm talking purely from my experience from when I first saw a computer, when I first used the internet. Yeah. So that was, I think, a gap of about 10 to 15 years or even less than that. Then things started moving really rapidly from the internet to the social media, because soon after that, the first thing that I used was Hotmail. And then there is this huge proliferation of different social media that happened. So anybody like to share what was their first experience of using the internet? I mean, what is the first thing that you used on the internet? Dr. Ravi or Dr. Ajay or anyone? What was the first thing that you used on the internet? Dr. Lakshmikant, Dr. Jabir?
First thing I used for pedagogy. First thing. That time internet was not so much available, so it was a luxury. So I downloaded the images variations from the pedagogy. I was usually doing DNB surgery that time, so that was my first experience with internet.
In the
So
internet. And
it was
what was
difficult.
social media that you used? I mean, what was the first?
Social media, I think when I started in MBBS, sir. MBBS the first time, I think.
Okay.
That's what we started with social media. Facebook, the time.
What's the first thing that you used? Okay.
Gmail and Facebook.
Yeah. Anyone else like to share what was the first thing they used on the internet?
Yeah, first time actually I used during my MBBS time. I think first one was the social media thing, one was Orkut at the time. Prior to Facebook, one social media activity was Orkut.
Yeah.
Then another email. So
yeah,
email was
yeah. So yeah. I mean, obviously, that reminds me of my age, because Hotmail was the first thing that I used, and social media came later. Yeah. But yes, I mean, our generation and you and I, who are alive today, are fortunate to see the transition, right? And then came the mobile phone, right? So first mobile in the year 97 or something like that. Yeah. Not long after I started using Hotmail or something like that. Anyone remember their first mobile phone?
Yeah, Nokia 3310.
Yeah. And that kind of was a big change already, right? So from the 15 years from computers to internet, and then another 3 years to social media, then another 2 years to mobile phones. Anyone else remember their first mobile phone? I mean, whereabouts? I mean, Dr. Khalid, Dr. Ajay, anyone like to share their first exposure to a mobile?
Actually, I don't remember the exact company. It was something from Alcatel. That's the first thing I remember. I don't know the exact.
I used one from Alcatel too, and the good thing about the Alcatel phone was that you could use a normal pen light cell instead if you didn't have a charger or something. So that was a unique thing about that. Okay, so we came to the mobile phone. Anyone else want to share their mobile phone experience? When was the first time they used a mobile phone? How many years after you used the phone?
I think the first mobile phone that I used was the Ericsson.
Okay. And how long after you got the internet?
I can't really.
So how many years after you first time used the internet did you use a mobile phone?
I think I used the internet before the mobile phone.
Yeah, of course, the internet first, but the mobile phone maybe came in 2 years or 3 years after the internet.
Probably 3 years. 3 years.
Right. So that's something that's very interesting. From 50 to 100 years to 15 years to 5 years to 3 years, and then over the last 3 years, life has changed dramatically, right? I mean, in the sense that the stuff that you can now do with a mobile phone, I'll talk about that in a minute, and I would invite you to share your experiences as well. So now the mobile phone is well here to stay, and we pretty much do most of the stuff we do on an everyday basis on a mobile phone. We are already talking about blockchain, the best example of which is, let's say, Bitcoin and all the digital currencies that we are talking about. And there's a huge debate on in India today about these virtual currencies. I mean, there are some think tanks that have come up and they're talking about whether India should or should not, or how they should adopt these virtual currencies. And of course, everyone is talking about artificial intelligence, how you can take data and do different things with it, how you can add value to whatever you're doing with that. And then there is the Internet of Things, which is a very important part of digital, because finally, the digital backbone is pretty much like a nervous system in medicine that we all talk about. The sensing all happens through IoT. So you have devices in your everyday working life. You use blood pressure monitors, you use glucose monitors, stuff like that. So connecting all of that is the Internet of Things, or there is also the Internet of Medical Things, largely called Internet of Things. So that acts like maybe your skin does, or your eyes do, or your nose do. Those are basically sensing organs which feed the nervous system and go onto the brain and help you make intelligent decisions, right? So can we go to the next slide, please?
So one doubt regarding IoT means it's actually connecting different devices.
It's the Internet of Things, right? So Internet of Things, yes, I mean, different devices connected through the Internet to gather data and then make intelligent use of it. That's Internet of Things. There is also a term called Internet of Medical Things, which is more medicine specific. In the Internet of Things, you also have temperature sensors for industry, and you have various other kinds of sensors, right? But essentially performing the same function. But Internet of Medical Things could be sensing devices, could be other devices controlled via the internet for medicine, could be a lot of things. So the technology is all there. The potential is unlimited. It's just a matter of how intelligently we use it. Yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting slide, and I'd like you all to maybe tell me what I may have missed out on this slide. Yeah. So if you look at this funnel here, right, there are a lot of things that we pretty much now access through the mobile phone. I think Komal has some connectivity issues, so she'll be back in a minute. But yeah, let's continue the discussion anyway. So we were talking about a number of things that have been that we're doing through the mobile phone. Just give me a second, please. Yeah. So, yeah, we were at this slide. Can you see my screen, please? Can you see my screen, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. So if you look on the right, there's a whole list of things that I have put together, which I basically now do through my mobile phone. And I may have missed out some. So anyone read in a physical newspaper? I don't. I haven't got the newspaper in my home for the last 3 or 4 years. I read online with the mobile phone, yeah, or on my laptop. I don't use a calendar anymore on the wall. I do that with my phone. Yeah, I don't use a diary anymore. I take notes on my phone. Yeah? The post office, I haven't been to one because email has pretty much sort of replaced everything. Yeah, the other functions of the post office also happen online, like which partially banking and stuff like that. Anyone bought a camera, a specific camera recently? No, I think we're all using phones. At least I would say about 95% of us use the camera on our phone, right? Anyone use a video camera lately? No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can read through the list. The calculating like torch is gone, right? All of us switch on the torch on our mobile phone when we want to do something, or when we're looking for something. If you've dropped your keys in your car, you switch on your mobile phone torch, right? There is no scanning anymore. Unless it's a very big document or something like that. We just take a picture with our phone and we WhatsApp it, or you can even save it as a PDF, so you don't need a scanner anymore. So very few situations where you actually need a scanner. Yeah. Remote control. A lot of devices are now remote control through your phone. You can do a lot of stuff on your TV via your phone. You can project to your TV. You can control your TV via your phone. No one. I haven't worn a wristwatch maybe for 10 years now. Yeah? I've stopped wearing watches because it's better on the phone. Why do I need a watch? Yeah. Fixed line phones, I think, are now more of a curiosity than. I don't use a fixed line phone at all. I don't own one. The telex was a relic of the past. It's gone to the fax machine. Anyone remembers using a fax machine lately? The fax machine was the hot thing. And just this morning we were having a conversation that the entire USSR collapsed because of the fax machine, and nobody could control the fax machine, right? So the fax machine itself is gone. Yeah. Video recorders are gone. Voice recorders are gone. Nobody uses a dictaphone anymore. Yeah, music players, we have them on phone now. No Walkmans anymore. No devices to carry your music. No MP3 players. They're all on the phone. The pen drives are gone because you can save files on the cloud and on your phone. The barcode readers. Google Lens does a lot of things, right? Including being a barcode reader, being a QR code reader. Yeah. And anyone use Google Lens? Anyone use Google Lens?
I have used.
Okay.
Now.
So
yes, sir. I keep using.
Yeah. Anyone use a compass to see the directions lately? My phone has a compass. Does your phone have a compass to see the directions? If you're going to see a house or if you're going to see a property, you want to see the northeast, west, south, and all that stuff, right? Anyone use a compass on the phone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. But we do. There is a compass on the phone, right? Anyone use a GPS, a separate GPS? You remember they were selling us Map My India and all that stuff for the car. No longer. It's either built into the car audio system or you have a phone which has a Google Maps or something. So the GPS is gone, right? Recently, I used a phone as a pulse oximeter. Anyone use the phone as a pulse oximeter? People who are going slam bang looking for pulse oximeters, paying $3,000 for a device that was only $1,000. And then somebody came out with this app called CareFlix on the phone, where you could just download the app and you put your finger on the camera and you could get your SpO2 and your heart rate. Anyone use that?
No, sir.
No, but there is one.
Yes,
Just look it up. There is one. There are pulse oximeters available. Just download an app and your phone functions as a pulse oximeter. Yeah. Banking and payments, Paytm, PhonePe, UPI. Pretty much every bank wants you to stop using checks and do NEFTs through your phone or your computer. Right? Anyone use a travel agency lately? Or it's all Make My Trip and Yatra.com and stuff like that. I haven't used a travel agency in a long time. In fact, my friends who own travel agencies are complaining that travel agencies are going out of business because people are using stuff online to book travel and stuff like that. Anything that I've left out? Can anyone think of something that I may have left out? I seem to have left out the television is there. Yeah. Anyone can think of something that I've left out?
School.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Pankaj.
Online classes.
That's a great one. That's a great one. Yeah. School online classes. Anyone else? If you're parents, you have certainly sort of witnessed your kids going to school on the phone. Yeah.
Sir, purchases is also online only. Everything. Purchase.
Yes. Yeah. Shopping is pretty much online. Or the whole of it. Yeah. Anyone else?
Even your ATMs are gone.
Yeah.
It's all getting cashless.
Yeah, it's all getting cashless. We may have cash for some more time, but yes, digital cash is catching up very, very fast. Yeah.
We can save the documents, government documents app, and
Yeah, that's a good one. All your vaccine certificates you need to have on the phone. Because very soon we are going to be in a situation where when you want to cross borders within the country, they will not want an RT-PCR certificate if you are vaccinated and it's already 20 days beyond your second vaccination. You're allowed to travel. I believe Indigo Airline is already doing that. Yeah. So if it's very handy to have your vaccine certificate on the phone. Yeah. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Anything that I may have left out? Okay, so let's go to the next slide.
Aadhaar card and driving license. M-Aadhaar is there now.
Yes, there is M-Aadhaar. You can have the registration certificate of your car on your phone. Yeah.
It's used for surveillance also in COVID situation.
Yes. I forgot the apps that
Arogya
Setu and CoWIN and stuff like that. Yeah, you could book your vaccination on the phone. Yes. Entry to the building that I live. Entry is done by seeing a green on your Arogya Setu. So it also works as a security device. Yeah. I mean, I forgot the security device category. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Anyone else? There is, of course, facial recognition is now very common around the world. I mean, your phone locks and unlocks with your facial recognition. So it will increasingly be used as a security device as well. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next slide. I mean, the fact is that the important point is that a single device has replaced so much. Yeah. And even more interesting facts on the next slide. How many of you actually remember having had to train to use WhatsApp or to use Instagram or to use Amazon or Netflix or Facebook? Did anyone go to any special classes to really learn how to use these? Or they were just so intuitive that you just downloaded them and you just took to it like fish took to water or a bird learns to fly. Yeah. Anyone having to teach them how to use it?
So for social media, there is no particular training. We just download it and use it.
Yeah. Amazon. Shopping on Amazon. Did anyone teach you how to shop on Amazon?
No. We just learned.
Did anyone teach you how to send an email?
No.
Did anyone teach you how to use a WhatsApp or something like that?
No, sir. But initially, for using computer, we got training. Yeah, so some bit 1 or 2 days training.
Yes, that's right. We all needed to learn a bit on the computer. I mean, those of us who have been around long enough remember the shift from MS-DOS to Microsoft Windows, right? That needed training. I mean, because MS-DOS itself needed training. And then you shifted from MS-DOS to Windows, you needed further training. And then came Microsoft Office, which changed all our lives. And we all probably remember having gone to the neighborhood computer training institute to learn how to use Word or, stuff like that. Yeah. But with the digital thing on the phone, nothing was necessary.
Nothing.
It's all gone. We just took to it as a fish was taking to water or the bird was learning to fly, right? Very intuitive, as if we always knew how to do it. Right? So that's one of the most amazing parts of it. The second most amazing part that I find about this transformation is how many of you have actually experienced on all these apps on your phone saying that the system down here, the system is down, you'll have to wait. Has anyone experienced that on WhatsApp or Netflix or on Facebook or Amazon? That you'll have to wait, the system is down. Not there, right?
Not much. No.
Yeah, it's completely reliable. completely 100% uptime, what we call in technology uptime, is zero downtime or 100% uptime, right? And that happens because of a very unique thing, a very unique kind of architecture that we will discuss later in this presentation. It's called microservices, right? Anyone remember having to fill a lot of forms doing all of this stuff? Or, most of the apps today have, or most of the things today have something like register via Facebook or register via Google or something like that. Yeah. Anyone experience that? The form filling is kind of going down.
Instead of we'll be
You have to fill a form, right?
yes.
So if you receive an OTP, your phone most of the time just takes the OTP and fills it when required, right? You don't have to key it in yourself a lot of times. Yeah?
Yes.
And also there is, since the keyboard is small on a phone, right? There is hardly any use of the keyboard most of the time. Either you are just touching, tapping, sliding, right? Clicking with your finger or something like that. Very little data entry, right?
Yes.
Anyone got tired of data entry on the phone recently? There's very little you have to type. Now you can, on WhatsApp, you can even, or most of the apps, you can even speak and translate it into text, right? And all of this happened very silently in a period of about 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 maximum. Yeah. So that's the power of digitalization, right? I just wanted to sort of introduce you to the power of digitalization. And you can see that there was nothing to learn. It was so intuitive. It happened and we didn't even realize that it happened. Has it increased the quality of our life? Has it increased the convenience of our life? I would say yes. Anyone think that it's taken away the quality of our life or reduced the convenience of our life? Not really, right? So let's look at some examples closer home. Yeah. Anyone remember the scene on the left? You being queuing up for a railway ticket.
Yes.
Yeah. And then reaching the window and the guy just closes the window and says lunch ho gaya. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you spend 2 hours in the queue, you reach the window and the guy says either lunch ho gaya or tickets to where you want to go on that particular date are not available. Yeah. So the form filling is gone. Availability is not a problem. You know right on your screen whether the reservation is available for a particular day or a particular train or aircraft or whatever. So that is gone. Availability checking is no problem. Form filling is not a problem. The queues are gone. Anyone remember having paid a premium to a tout for a ticket? That is gone. Yeah. Nobody says lunchtime ho gaya, window band ho gaya, right? Lunchtime, so windows closed. Right? It's the same in the banks, right? You do a lot of transactions. Again, all touch, tap, slide, very little typing, yeah, clicking, all that stuff. So it's made a huge difference to the quality of life, right? And the reliability. It's always up. It's never down. You do get a reservation in one transaction on whatever day you want. Availability is very clear. So that's really amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Same thing with banks. So the other interesting example is Paytm or any other phone pay or anything that you may use, right? So typically, how do I buy drugs these days? I send a request on WhatsApp to the chemist. He sends me the drugs, and I pay him by Paytm. Yeah. Or you could do that with the pharmacy. If you buy it from an e-pharmacy, you could do that with the e-pharmacy, right? No cash exchange, drugs delivered home. Yeah. So you can pay for your parking, you can pay for your milk booths, accept payments via Paytm, auto rickshaws, even sabji walas. I mean, even the vegetable vendors who come to you on a cart accept Paytm. So, I mean, what can be a bigger change than a vegetable vendor or a fruit vendor coming to your home accepting Paytm? Yeah. Tea stalls, I mean, even you pay for a cup of tea with Paytm. Grocery stores, petrol pumps, chemists, street food carts, and any other. Paytm also has a mall, by the way. Right? Anyone shop on Paytm? Yeah. Has anyone recently heard on Paytm that the vendor does not have change? Chutta nahi hai? Don't have change, sir. Right? All that problem is gone, right? No change. Yeah, take a toffee instead. All gone, right? And no keyboard, only touch, tap, slide with your finger. Right? Another fascinating example is Practo. Yeah, I mean, and this is closer to home because we're all in healthcare. So people are doing video consultations over Practo. People are managing their practices over Practo. There is a digital prescription available. You can order medicines. You can book appointments. You can get lab tests booked and samples collected from home over Practo. You can read healthcare articles and blogs. You can access alternative health, fitness, physiotherapy through Practo. Insurance companies, you can buy medical insurance through all these apps. Book appointments, of course, and book appointments in hospitals. Any other things that I've missed out on Practo? Anyone?
Practo is also providing teleconsultation, and it has been very beneficial during the COVID times. I've used it.
Yeah. So somewhere I read that 80% of the cases don't even need to go to the hospital. They can just do with triage, right? And telemedicine is a great way of providing triage. Could be Practo, could be any other platform, right? Okay, so the next one is amazing. This is amazing because I travel to Delhi to Jaipur. I travel at least once a month. And I used to waste at least 45 minutes on the 3 or 4 tolls that come on the way. It's all gone. I mean, I just have a FASTag on my thing, which I bought through Paytm. And every time I cross a toll, I receive an SMS. Amount is debited to my Paytm. It just reserves $150 for FASTag. Anyone experience these? So the long queues are gone at the toll. You save a lot of time. You don't have to carry cash. The change is not a problem. When you wait in a queue, you are also burning petrol or diesel, whatever vehicle you are driving, right? It's completely cashless. And I think Komal was talking about this morning that over the weekend she even paid her. So you can even pay your parking now via FASTag. It is that simple, right? Seamless. And of course, on all these things, you have the loyalty benefits which people build with cashback and whatever else. So this is what we talk about digitalization. So this is the effect of digitalization. So my question to you is, should it be any different in healthcare? Anyone think it should be different in healthcare, or it should be just as easy, just as convenient for healthcare? For the patient, for the provider, for the clinician, for the payer, or whoever is paying for the insurance company? Should it be any more complicated than this for them?
Basically, the information that we share is health-related information, so there should be some privacy issue related to that. It should be easy.
That is being addressed. I mean, that's a legal aspect of it. But in terms of operational efficiency, in terms of interoperability, in terms of seamlessness, shouldn't it be as simple as this?
Yes.
Right. So that's exactly why we are doing what we are doing, and that's exactly why we have these sessions with you on how simple healthcare can become if we choose to go digital. And what's the magic behind digital? Right? The magic behind digital, I mean, this is what can happen if healthcare goes digital. So the first thing that I would suggest to you is there's nothing to fear. In your other fields of your life, you have adopted to digital, like I said, just like a fish learns to swim, right? It's the same in healthcare. It's not a science fiction. It's just the same as other areas in your life where you have started using digital solutions without a problem, right? We talked about telemedicine and what happened in COVID-19. So, telemedicine is a big part of that solution. Also, I would like to suggest that digital health will simplify a lot of difficult things. So the question is not whether we should use these technologies. I guess the question is really on how we could employ these technologies. The other thing is that a physician will never be replaced. However, I mean, it'll certainly increase what I call throughput. That every physician will be able to do more, serve more, and more people will have access to healthcare if we adapt digital health. Yeah. So it's very important. I spoke to you about it in the governance talk. That the throughput of the system is very, very important because we need to serve everyone. Yeah. So digital can be a big empowerment in that. Now, what's the magic here? The magic is what I referred to as microservices, and I'll touch very briefly on it because there are better experts than me to talk about it. And yeah, so the magic is that, as I said, you don't experience any downtime. There is never any queue. There's never any waiting, right? That's because microservices are basically a very small database dedicated to an individual function within that app or within that solution. And therefore, any maintenance or anything else that is needed does not take time. A particular service within that service may be slow for a bit or maybe under maintenance for a bit, but it does not stop the rest of the services from being delivered or functional. Yeah, there will be people talking about it in more detail, but this is how it works. If you look at the Uber microservice architecture, there is a database or a microservice, as we call it, for passenger management. There's one for managing your billing. There's one for managing the payments. There's one for driver management. There's one for passenger experience, which is the web interface that you have. There is a driver side interface. There is a trip management system, which is connected to navigation. And then there is a notification sending and receiving thing. So all together, these microservices, the Uber experience. I mean, how many of you use Uber or Ola, right? Very simple, right? You know when a cab is, how far it is, when it is reaching you. You can book it from anywhere, any time of the day. You can, again, no problem of change, having change or not change. You can pay via Paytm or you can pay cash or you can pay via credit card, etc. The entire experience is different, right? It's extended the service. It's added to the quality of service. So another very popular example that I'd like to talk to you about is Netflix, right? How many of you have used Netflix? I mean, how many of you have seen movies on Netflix? When I say Netflix, don't limit to Netflix. Think about the other OTT platforms. This is an OTT platform. Basically, there is Alt Balaji, there is Z, there is B4U, there is Hotstar. There are dozens of them, right? So how many of you have used anything like Netflix? Anyone? I mean,
Yeah, so I have used. I'm using Netflix, Amazon, Prime.
Everybody should be using it, sir.
Yeah, all of us are using.
I think almost everyone today has used Netflix or some such provider. You know, it could be Alt Balaji, could be Z, could be B4U, could be Hotstar. You know, any of these. Yeah, Discovery, whatever else. So Netflix, do you know that it started as a DVD lending library, just like the neighborhood video library? It started like that. And nobody knew it. It was just a little operation somewhere. But today, everyone knows Netflix around the world because it chose the right technology, it chose the microservice architecture, and you can see the difference that it's made, right? Now, a very small example of the difference that it has made is that in 2019, they spent $15 billion, billion with a B, on content alone. I mean, just the content. Now they're buying movie theaters in Los Angeles, right? So that they could exhibit via Netflix. Surely, of course, it will have competition from Disney because Disney has rights to the most of the software, which is the highest, top 10 hit films of 2019. They were Disney's intellectual property. But then Netflix is building its own software, right? Suddenly, if you talk of the electric car or the driverless car, every company is building one, but that would not have happened without Tesla starting a electric car, right? Or a self-navigating car. And I talk to you just like that, if you can see, I talk to you about the other OTT platforms. So Netflix is one example, but then there are dozens of others that you see on your screen when you start your Fire Stick or anything. There are dozens of other platforms, right? So just like Tesla started that revolution in the e-vehicles, Netflix is doing that in the content delivery. Amazon has now started providing healthcare to its Seattle-based employees through digital health, right? So you could communicate with the healthcare provider, text, video, or to the mobile care clinic. A nurse or a practitioner can come home, see you, medicines can be delivered. So essentially, what we are talking about is not only will it make healthcare seamless, it will also extend what we call the care continuum, or it will extend the hospital right into the patient's doorstep. So, and remember all of this. The most important fact that I think of is you did not buy a special device to access any of these things. You did not have to subscribe to a special network. It happened over your regular mobile network, right? So you did not have to invest in any more devices or infrastructure for all of this to happen. I mean, it happened over publicly available devices, people owned devices, infrastructure that was already in place. Yeah? It did not, unlike conventional IT, it did not require a massive amount of investment for this to happen. And yet it made a tremendous difference to our lives. Yeah? And there is no reason why healthcare should not be the same. Yeah? So this is basically unlocking the power of IT. You have speed in responding to the change. It gives you the ability to react to what is happening in the industry. And last but not the least, all of us work for some organization or the other, and they need to maintain competitive advantages. And digital or IT helps you do that. So I would now hand you over to Komal, who will walk you through the Max Healthcare case study, which will further elaborate the power of IT. Komal, over to you, please.
Thank
would
you.
You, like to present, or would
you can present because there's some flip today. Not
okay,
sure.
okay. You speak and just ask me to change the slides, and I'll do that. Please.
Perfect. I'll do that. So,
please. Thank you.
Like Arun has walked us through the importance and how digitization has changed from analog to mobile, AI, IoT, right? So I remember listening to my father who says, in this life, we can't ever reach moon. But we have seen now people are talking about buying land on moon, right? Or Mars. So things are changing way faster. So I'll be talking about Max Healthcare Transformation, which a couple of the team members did way back in 2009, 2012. And we have Dr. Pankaj Gupta here, who was the lead that time and who is the lead here as well. So we'll be sharing a lot how we did it, and it has been one of the fantastic projects, like one of my favorite projects I did there. Arun, can you please share next slide? Arun? So most of you might have, yeah, thank you, Arun. Most of you might have heard about Max Healthcare, and for few of you who may not know, healthcare is actually, Max is actually a chain of hospitals. At the time when we were part of the team, it was 6 hospitals, Delhi NCR, but later on they expanded to Punjab, Haryana, Uttarakhand, and to international level also. Today, if I talk about, they have like 14 hospitals and they are providing services in 30 disciplines. So imagine we integrated all these 14 hospitals, gave them an infrastructure where they can seamlessly keep adding hospitals, keep increasing their infrastructure, and IT is actually stand as their beacon. This is one of the very fantastic examples. I don't next. So when we started on Max, that was a time when Max was actually having 6 hospitals in Delhi NCR region only. So they had an ambition to go beyond 6, and that time they were planning to go from 6 to 10 hospitals. They also had plans to take over or build some education universities. They were also planning for health and wellness center in regions like Dehradun and Uttarakhand. So they also wanted to have the clinical diagnosis procedures that can actually help them track not only the patient, the expenditure from the management point of view, taking their hospitals from the bed size of 1,000 to 2,000 and 5,000. So there was a multi-year plan they have laid down, which was not possible unless there is a stable IT reliable backbone in the system. And one thing like we definitely want to add here is that was one of the requirement that all the systems across Macs, it's not only their physical infrastructure should have a similar look and feel, even their IT system should have a similar look and feel. So it's not only the patient who will move from one hospital to another will have a similar look and feel, even their staff, if they're moving from one location to another location, should not go through a learning curve. So that kind of ambitions they were having when we actually build a team with them. Dr. Pankaj, would you like to add anything?
So you covered it mostly. So this could have been possible only when you have a IT infrastructure to support all the transactions across the entire chain of hospitals. So if a patient moves from one hospital to the other, so the record should be, the system should be able to recognize the patient. The record should be portable, and the clinician should be able to sort of make decision based on what has already been done, rather than starting afresh. Now that applies to outpatient as well as to inpatient. So that was the kind of model that was required to be done. And all the supporting services, including lab, radiology, and pharmacy and everything. So we needed to do everything end to end. So that was a huge challenge. And then we'll sort of go through what all underwent the change and how we were able to establish it well before digital technology actually came. So remember this was 2009 to 2012. Digital had really not happened at that point in time. So yeah, back to you, Komal.
Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. So what were the problems and why it was needed? I remember when I walked in the Max Healthcare Center for the first time as a transition manager, I saw their IT services team sitting in one corner of the parking lot under a shed. So you can imagine the treatment as an IT support was getting at that time, and not even part of the main building, main infrastructure. So that's how we started this problem. And from there, we made it a backbone to the entire chain of hospital. Max, though it was a healthcare hospitals, even then they had an in-house IT services team. There was a team which was working for them, multiple vendors, multiple people, independent contracts. So all combination of resources were there. Some are working, some are not working. The problem was if you are diverting from the main business, that is where the problem came. Infrastructure, IT infrastructure was really distributed. So every hospital will have their own set of servers, their own set of even email servers. Some of the servers were actually lying on one corner of the room, not knowing where the server would be, right? So all these things were actually causing an hindrance for them to move forward. Hospital information system, which they actually wanted to grow, was one of the fine systems, I would say. Not that it was having a problem, but the point was it was limited to having only procurement support, financial supports, accounting, and nursing. Beyond that, if we talk about any of the clinical diagnosis or any of the procedure that could be captured by the system, no, there was no system in place which can actually support the doctors or the nursing staff. Similarly, the processes, it was really hard for the team to maintain the lights on mode, right? So making the system 24/7 available, which we are like, take it by default today, right? We don't even expect a system to be down for a minute. But during that time, system used to go down anytime now and then. And imagine if we are trying to build that as a backbone, what if my 6 hospital or 7 hospital just stop working all of a sudden, and there is a whole lot of queue at the billing station just because the system has gone down. Any ticket, any issues was all manual. People will walk to the IT team room and take them for a tea, coffee, drink, and get the work done. But there was no tracking of the record. Like if there is system down, Where is my severity one issues, right? Even if you call the call centers today, you get a ticket number, a reference number provide. So either they give you a reference number or you get an SMS. But at that time, there was no system which was actually recording how many issues I'm getting. So if management has to know that, okay, am I getting like 7 high priority system, or how many times my system has gone down in like a quarter or a month, there was no tracking at their system. Business continuity plan was absolutely not there. So if the servers are down, they're down, right? The Max has to rebuild it, right? The team has to sit down for days and weeks to rebuild the system. There was no business continuity that the servers is down from A, we can shift to B. So those kind of problems actually build up the stakeholder issues, which were struggling to turn around things faster. I remember one time, like one of the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, there was an announcement by the government where they changed the tax rate from X to Y, like from 7 to 7.5. And I was told that it will take a week's time to get that change done, which should be in a click, right? So it should not take more than half an hour or maybe an hour, but it will. They needed 5 days just to get the change done. So similarly, things which should have been done in minutes was actually taking weeks, days, and beyond. So stakeholders were struggling. Expansion was their plans. The management wants to expand. The infrastructure is not supporting, and without IT, you can't expand. So IT is not just a sideline that once a department which you can just make it and leave it. It's actually the backbone. So it became the center. We'll talk through that, but it became the center of the system. So that was a time when Max Healthcare did the partnership with Pero Systems, which later on got bought over by Dell Services, and today it is under the umbrella of NTT Data. This partnership was established for a year, for 10-year deal. So with an amount of $20 million, and there was specific scope what Max wanted to achieve. Max wanted to have a stabilized HIS information system, right? For any information, like wherever you go, the hospital has a facility information system or facility management system. So here we are just calling it hospital information system. EHR, which they were actually lacking to get their clinical record, so it was not there. So that was something which was needed. So there was a dedicated team which put we forward, which implemented Vista. We'll walk you through that. IT infrastructure all scattered, servers lying here and there, even in the wardrobes. Nobody knows. You won't be knowing that you are sitting next to category 1 or severity 1 server, right? And you are just working. So servers were actually open. People can go, shut down, do anything. So that kind of infrastructure was causing them a problem. So they wanted that to be covered. Disaster recovery and business continuity for any hospital. And they look forward for us to give them a support structure where when they are going for acquisition or building new facility, they don't have to struggle for weeks and days to bring their systems online. So the roadmap which we designed as a team during that time under the umbrella of Pero Systems was 3-phase approach. We will transition their systems, we will improve the productivity, and then later on do the optimization. So anytime we are taking over, these are my 3-stage processes which we follow. Under transition, this was Max deal. We transition 3 specific categories of services. We transition their IT infrastructure. From every location, the team went, identify their servers, identify the PCs, identify what is important, and then created an inventory. They didn't even knew what is lying where and who is supporting what. So all that things were done. IT services, application services, that was one thing which we transitioned. HIS was the main, the critical one application, plus a couple of more, and human resources. So when I say human resources, we actually took over their team which was supporting IT services, because they are the ones who have been supporting the system. They were the ones which were having the knowledge over a build over a year. It was not documented. So we can't. So that was a reason the dependency was so high on the resources that we have to take in. In human resource, I would like to share it was not only the Max team. We found that there are team working from independent consultant to multiple vendors, and somebody wants to continue working, somebody doesn't want to continue working. So all those things happen. So permutation combination was there. Transition, yeah, go, yeah, just a minute, Arun. So later on, our goal was to, once we have transitioned all the in three categories on our board, we will be working on improving the productivity, under which the first one was to stabilize HIS, to give them a financial backbone system, implement Vista so that it takes care of the clinical needs, design customized processes not only for their IT services but also for the governance, for change management, for training, all those categories. And over and above, centralize the data center, bring all the critical servers under the umbrella of Dell, under uh, centralized system. Uh, Dr. Pankaj, anything you want to add before we walk on optimization?
So just one thing on processes, there was a whole lot of process optimization that was done. This was an opportunity to map every process. We went, to the X level of detail in terms of, the clinical processes, the administrative processes, the support functions. So very, very detailed in terms of what happens next. The reason this was done was, the first was the as-is processes in terms of how is it working right now. And then we had to envision and say, all right, out of these, what are the steps that are going to go away? So what is going to be the to be processes? So we had to envision when the Vista comes in. So far people are writing it on a piece of paper. Now when Vista comes in, that paper will be gone. And also we had to make decisions. So far, the drugs were being given as cut strips and open bottles and all that. Now going forward, you have to make a decision whether you can give cut strips and open bottles. You can't. So, those decisions had to be made. And then, there were things like clinical decision support. So, the doctors had to sort of go through a clinical protocol, and Vista had that built in. So you have to decide whether those clinical protocols will sort of hold good. And, so there were clinical templates to be built. So we had to build clinical templates for every specialty, every doctor, every department, and, get them verified, and everybody had to sort of be comfortable with it. And it was a very, very, very detailed process in terms of as is and to be. Now, if you divide the time between the actual implementation and the planning from, as is to be, I would say about 60 to 70% of the time went in as is to be planning, and the rest of it then was a cakewalk. And when we were doing this work, a lot of the hospital executives got very, very annoyed and got impatient, saying, you guys come with bunch of papers. You are supposed to be IT guys, but you're floating around with a bunch of papers on which some drawings are there. And then, you are asking us a bunch of questions. You make corrections and you make changes in your drawing, go back, and we don't see the IT system. So for months together, they got frustrated. At one point in time, they said, where is your IT system? Can you just show us what is going to come? So, it is a very, very detailed process to map every step, because when you take it from the current state to a future state, a lot of the steps are going to go away and new steps are going to get added. If you had the luxury of a digital system, maybe the new steps would have been very intuitive. But in those days, we were dealing with systems which were client server, and a lot of changes were required in those systems. So just wanted to highlight that, IT is not just about technology. It is not about servers and mobiles. It is more about the process change. So if you are able to do the process change well, the rest of it will fall in place.
Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. And once any process change is done, the last and the continuous process starts, and that is a continuous optimization. So it needs to be integrated, the system has to be adopted, integrated, and start giving a result back to the team where they can actually record, see the benefits of it. If the customer is not getting the benefit of it, the job is not done well. So that's what it was done. Arun?
Next slide.
Yeah, yes, please. Okay. I just want to walk you through about the transition because that was one of our very important procedure and for any infrastructure when we take over or be it new hospital or mergers, these steps would generally follow and we thought we'll just give it few more minutes because before we can move on. So in transitions, the under four categories is what we divided. It was basically we took care of infrastructure, services, human resources, and processes. Like we discussed, the infrastructure. Anytime we have to consolidate, the servers have to be identified at each location. So all the six hospitals which were there present during the time of 2009, the team has to go on each location down, walk through those location, identify the servers, be it email servers, be it low priorities application servers, or somebody has just installed and left it because there were servers which we identified were actually hired and to be returned. You cannot run a hospital chain of hospitals with rented servers, right? So those things. And the best thing was the management was even surprised to based on our findings when we presented the due diligence report back to them. Multiple networks, every hospital chain was having the multiple networks, even if they were 10 or 15 kilometers apart, they were having different networks, different servers. Distributed infrastructure team, very high touch culture. People will call, and what they expect is somebody will come on my desk and fix the PC. Well, it doesn't happen nowadays. We have changed, right? So that was a culture we started with. It was very hard for us to take them from person dependent to process dependent environment. Similarly, in IT services, like we talked, HIS was our main goal because that was the backbone and that was where the Vista is also supposed to connect. Multi-vendor environment there as well, both IT infrastructure and IT services, where people were coming and going without much of a notice, no process in place, higher turnaround time, large number of open tickets, no tracking, whether it has been solved or needs to be solved. Anybody who can walk in or have a good relation will get their ticket solved faster. HR was always an issue with the team and the knowledge because the team was having a limited knowledge on the latest technology and it was in house. We saw that the team was not getting a regular training, right? Not only on the IT front of it, but also on the clinical front of it. So there was a huge gap when we transition the team from max to on our role. We have to actually tell them the processes that we need to do, be it transition processes, support processes, severity, ticket maintenance processes. So all those things, the same person who is supporting max for 10 years was actually a fresher to us. So you can imagine those type kind, if you're not rotating the resources, if you're not giving them the exposure, after a certain time, even anybody would get stagnant. On premise, under the processes, like it was a high culture environment. Everybody wants personal attendance, right? Somebody has to come and attend me. They will not prefer to call even a call center when we establish a centralized call center. They will not want to call them. They will want to call on their personal phone numbers and tell them. Not willing to call center, not willing to log a ticket, but yes, they want everything to be done on the click. No formal processes, no documentation, no trainings, and definitely no rollouts. So those are the things which, when anytime we are doing a transition, this is actually work. It was one of our checklist, detailed checklist was followed. But unless these things are in place, I don't see any way to actually bring any hospital system to a level where they can automatically integrate. Because if you see nowadays, this is a lot of mergers are happening, not a lot of acquisitions are happening. People are not going greenfield, right? So if my system is not supporting my business, it's not of good value to me. My system has to be there as my backbone and as a problem solver. It should not become a problem itself. So that's how we see IT as it has to be an enabler. I don't know, next slide, please. So over a period of time, it took us about a year when we did the transition from A to B, from as is to B. So I'll just walk you through how we did it and what was the end result which we delivered it. So in IT infrastructure and IT services, the very first thing, the very first task we did was get this data center properly centralized, right? So we brought systems from multiple locations and centralized in a Dell Services Noida Sector 125. During that time, it, it was the first time when the internet was taken to a private cloud. Now we like use Google and everything. It was not there. It didn't existed. So it was alien language that time. So that was the first infrastructure enabled project for Indian healthcare. So Max was actually a sample where private cloud was there. We also implemented the early warning monitoring systems on the network and on the high critical servers, on the high critical application, on the high critical services. So there were services, we sat down with the customer, we identified the services which they want 24/7, what will be the downtime, what is the acceptable downtime. So it's generally it's like 99.99%. Anything below that may cause me a penalty or on a monitoring or other kind of issues. So all those things were actually worked out. And on the top, we also established a technical call center 24/7 where they can call in, right? They don't have to wait for an IT person to come next day, 10 o'clock, and then attend their request. They can call up a call center who is ready to help them out step by step. So those things were implemented on the ground, which over a period of time, they identified the benefit. So the resources, which were like 50, 60 resources across 6 hospitals, like 5, 7 resources per hospital, was actually come down to 10. So you can imagine the volume we have reduced by bringing and optimizing the resources. Similarly, in IT services, right, the HIS, which was the backbone supporting the system, imagine what happens if HIS goes down during the IP billing or some surgery is going on or the patient's queue, right? So things will, hospitals become standstill. What we did was we bifurcated, identified the critical services that HIS has to support, took it out and made it independent. So if one services is down, if my billing is down, my procurement can continue, right? If my reporting is services is not working, my administration can continue. My nursing staff can do the indenting. So all those things we started bifurcating so that highest uptime can be given to them. We centralized the application support. We actually had it's just written 3 words, but trust me, that was the most challenging part where we have to change the behavior. So behavior is also one of the things when it comes to transition, because what's happened is I am used to having a personal attendant, right? So personal, somebody will come to my desk and help me fix it. I'm not used to be on the call and say, okay, do A, B, C, D steps and you're fixed. I want the person to come, sit and talk. We actually have to do a change, behavior change, when we took all their application support, all their resources and put them at a central, and not only central, we actually put them in a Dell services. So taking away from them, but again, the benefit Max realized it later. It went from 60 to 20 resources, and that too in different categories of team, L1, L2, and L3, where L1 was just a first level support, telling the person to do what, L2 is slightly technical, and L3 was actually fixing their server is down or high severity issues or some technical things were needed. And we also gave them the tools, techniques to monitor their status, right? To monitor their service requests. When I say service request, it's basically the change they want, to monitor what is happening. So it gave the management a clear visibility that how many tickets I'm getting in a month. Is the system really stable? Now they could actually quantify that from month January to June, has my tickets reduced or has increased? So those visibility actually gave the management to take a further decision. Can my system support the expansions? Can my system support the scalability? Scalability was a big deal those days, right? You have primary server, secondary server. Can I scale it? If I bring 3 more new hospitals, can I scale it? Maybe, may not be. So if not, then what do I have to do? So they could actually do planning, much advanced planning than what they were doing it earlier. It was more of firefighting when we took over, which became as a proactive steps. In a human resource, when we took over the resources, we also added our resources. Now Max doesn't have to worry about the finding a resource, hiring a person. Let them work on the clinical staff or other stuff, right? They should not be worried about hiring a Java resource or hiring microservices resource or any technical resource for that matter, or talking to different vendors. During this process, like Dr. Pankaj said, from as is to be, there always have to be a process. We introduced the concept of councils during at that time, where we have 3 groups. We had clinical reference group, which was also a council, a governance council, and executive councils. So based on the resources available, all requests were gone to the council. They will sit down, they will prioritize and help team to deliver it. So the team is actually working on the right changes. Not only that, that was one part of it, where they were actually helping the IT team to take them forward. They were also helping us by taking their clinical staff to understand that the change has to be done. Bringing change to any life. When I say change, is a behavior change in terms of application support. So there was a lot of change that was happening at that time. So bringing the change, there was a lot of resistance. People don't like change, trust me. We are happy living in my world, don't change it. But we were actually changing things on the ground, everywhere, be it personal touch, be it IT. So there were people who actually resigned, put their papers, walk out, screamed at us, but we were there. Trust me, there was room where people actually said, this is not going to work, we will not support you. So those executive council help us also to take it forward and help us implement the change. So unless we have the management involved, unless we have the high stakeholder sponsors involved in the process of implementation, these things doesn't happen. Generally, this is where one of the failure points. So rollout processes is another thing where we actually sat down with the management, work it out that how the rollout will be, right? Every time if I'm getting a requirement and I have to shut down the systems, I just can't go ahead and shut down anytime. So there was a specific downtime allocated to us where we worked out and started implementing the processes so that we can roll out faster, we can tell team, we can tell management when to expect our work and what to do. And accordingly, we can plan the training sessions if the rollout needs any training. Business continuity and disaster recovery was another 2 processes, as well as infrastructure needed that was given to us. So after disaster recovery, Max was actually taken care that in case their Noida's data center downs, we had a disaster recovery up and working in Chennai within data center. Not only the servers, we also give them solution in case people have to fly, right? In case we have to bring up a new team. Suppose something happens, right? We are not in a control. Something happens in Noida, things doesn't work out. Now what to do? In how much time my Chennai center will be ready, not only with the servers, but with the resources, but with the people. So those things were worked out and given to them. Dr. Pankaj, anything you want to add?
Well, I have many stories which I can tell, but I think you covered it pretty well. I'll add just a couple of things on the process side again. One example is that Vista was built in the US by the VA, so it was designed in a certain way, and when we had to apply it to India, there were changes that had to be done in the workflows and the processes and everything. So I'll give you some examples on that. So one was in the US, the most optimum way is for the patient to be stationary and the doctor to be mobile. So the doctor goes from room to room, checks the patient, goes to the next room, checks the next patient, so that doctor's time is not wasted in waiting. And that's how Vista is configured. And that is an alien thing for India. In India, we had to make a decision whether to change the system or change the process in the hospital. And there was a long debate that went on, and so all the clinicians were on one side and the management was on the other side. Management said, well, we would like to change the process, whereas the clinician said, I'm not going to get up and go from room to room to check the patient. So so these are interesting conversations that happen. And then there was also about whether the payment first or the service first. So if the order is given for a laboratory service, so the system was configured because it was built in the West to deliver the service and then charge the fee. Whereas here, the culturally, it was exactly the reverse. So you had to sort of change the process completely upside down, because the cultural systems and the cultural mindsets did not allow the service to be rendered and then charge for the fee. So some of those examples. And just adding one more to what Komal said in terms of the change, the service request and L1, L2, L3 support. There was a time when the GDAs, the general duty assistants, so they went up in arms, and they were about to actually pick up agitation, go and sit outside on a dharna. And the reason was that they said, we in a typical working day, about 90% of the time we are carrying files. So we are carrying files from one desk to the other, one nursing station to the other, or we are doing paper management work and all that. Now you're going to make it completely paperless or nearly paperless, and our jobs are pretty much gone. What are we going to do? So it took me a long time to help them understand that IT never takes away jobs. It only redefines the job. The number of people will remain the same, rather the number of people will go up, because you're going to need people for something else. So and then ultimately that is what happened, that the same GDS were trained to carry the medicines, because now we were doing real-time orders. Something that you saw in CPOE, BCMA lecture earlier, that these are real-time orders. So once the order is given, the barcode is printed, it is put on the medicine, and near real-time somebody has to pick it up and run with it. So now the GDS had to be trained to do that job. And if we were having 100 GDS earlier, after this process you needed 150, because this was a higher level skill, and this was going to be requiring more people. And so that was also a decision, right? Whether you train a GDA and put the GDA onto that job, or you bring in an automatic cart, because automatic cart, which is a robotic cart, is also going to cost money. So the management had to make those decisions. So interesting. I mean, the entire transformation takes turns on things which are really not really IT. And in a transformation like this, IT is just one small little thing sitting out there in the corner. What you're dealing with is human resource, you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with change, which is completely non-technology in nature. Back to you, Komal.
Thank you. I would like to share one example with all of you, which is like one of my best memories of Max, and which will give you a very a touch that how humans, how technology, how change, how behavior is impacted. Let me ask you a question, right? How difficult is if I ask you to please change your password every quarter? How difficult is it is? Any answers? That if I tell you your system password will expire, you have to change it. How tough is that thing?
It's easy to change, but it's very hard to remember.
We have to remember. But how tough it is, right? See, what happened was I was actually the application delivery manager role at that time, right? So there was an observation that systems, they log in with one user and one password and it never shut down, right? System never goes down. So the duties change, the other person will come and continue the system. We don't know who is entering the order. We don't know who is processing the result. The audit trails, which when we saw it, it was like garbage. Honestly, I can use it because if I'm putting a request for one person, another person is also putting a request for another, using the same system, how will we know who is making the mistake? So we thought, let's put a rule that the password will expire and everybody has to use their own user ID and password. Can you trust it's actually blowed off? It was an escalation to the highest level of management that you cannot make the password and don't make us change or log in. Then when we come in, we don't want to even log into the system. It should be open and running. How can you leave the system? It's like you are leaving a system with your Gmail account on, and once you're gone, somebody else will come and take over the Gmail account. We don't do that, right? It's a concern. So based on management decision, we thought it's easy. It should be done. We just took over the survey request. It was not a big deal technically, right? So my team went ahead within 2 days. Within 2 days, yeah, maximum 2.5 days, we get this change on our regular shutdown time. We implement the change. Next morning, when people came in and found their password expired, it was a whole shutdown. The Macs was standstill just because they don't know how to enter the password. What to do? Everybody was locked out. I got a call from CIOs saying implement immediately, roll back. Just that small change, right? And people were like hell noise, right? Everybody was chaos. A person like me who has lived entire life in IT services and multiple environment, be it manufacturing, finance, multiple aviation, right, was so surprised to know, can a password change be such a big incident? Well, we have no option, but we roll back the entire change, put it back, the same user ID, the same password, and says, okay, we are stepping back, but this has to be fixed. Just to get that password change in their behavior, I have to sit down with the team and work out a 3 months plan to go from staff to staff and train them how to change the password. So those kind of a reluctance is what comes when we are doing the transitions. And this was one of a very small example I always quote. So with all this transition, the benefit which Max saw was that they could actually integrate their dream of making from 6 to 10 to 12 facilities within few clicks or within few days. Now they don't have to wait for months and days or to get the change done or make the facility up. What we used to ask them was, give us your facility address and you are good to go. Give us the data of the staff that will be working. We'll give them the access and they are good to go. So once you have the start, give us the details. And that is what the benefit will do. The staff was productive the day they will join. They can start rolling on the system. The training will be planned for them. So those benefit was which Max started seeing after year and a half after the transition. Anything, any observation anybody wants to share? Similar experience? So we have multiple stories. If you want to hear any other story, let me know. So yeah, Arun, can we move to next slide? Vista implementation, we have already covered in one of our previous sessions, which was under BCMA and CPOE session. So in case you have any questions, we can ask now or whenever you feel convenient, we can do that. These are some of the business benefits we thought we'll share with you all, that just the transition, right? We are talking about optimizing resources, optimizing infrastructure, optimizing everything you have. Just the paperless, like making the hospital paperless was started saving them 2 to 3 crore or maybe 3 to 5 crores a year. Now that they have expanded, just think how much of money they are saving in terms of just not using the paper. Standardized operations. You work in hospital 1 or hospital 2 or hospital I, be it interstate or anything, you will have the same interface. System is not changed, so there is no time you're spending in training. You can move from one hospital to another and be productive just like any hospital, right? Bring in as many facility as you want, bring in as many education institute as you want, bring in as many health centers as you want. The system was enabled to support all those kind of variety of businesses, right? It was supporting that. It was supporting the clinical information system. So now management was able to make their proactive decision how to do it, like how much of time they need, how much of clinical staff they need, and what would be the training, and when can they be productive. So they could actually plan things much ahead rather than doing a firefighting and then running around and then looking forward to somebody helping them. Okay, this is a system, can you make it work? No, it was all process driven. So from people dependent, we make it to process dependent. So if somebody is there today, somebody who is training you is there, and tomorrow he's gone, it doesn't, you're not losing the knowledge. So we were trying, we made them a knowledge system, we made the documents to them and the trainer model was followed there also. Dr. Pankaj, over to you. I'm sure you'll have some more to add.
Sure. The biggest success was, on the quality side, because the hospital achieved, HIM State 6 accreditation. And that's a very rare one. If you look at HIM's IMRAM model, there are only about 40 hospitals globally that have achieved Stage 6 accreditation. And Max is one of those hospital chains that has Stage 6. And that's the only one in India. There is nobody else who's been able to match that. And because of the process standardization that we talked about earlier, NABH was a cakewalk. Earlier they used to struggle to get NABH. After this, it was a cakewalk. They didn't even have to think. They could, they would welcome spot checks from NABH and say, come and check anytime, no problem. So that is a kind of massive quality shift that happened. And the confidence that came in the operations was, no problem. We are okay to even go for any kind of international certification. At that time, JCI was not that prevalent. Later on, it did. So, so the confidence level went up multiple times, and that was one of the largest benefits that they got because of the total IT and process transformation that they went through. The other one was they were able to attract a lot of FDI investments. So something, the hospital used to be running in red at one point in time. Because of these transformations that happened, the hospital not only became profitable, but attracted a lot of FDI investment. And that is a transformation that nobody could sort of imagine that, things like that will happen. So those are the two I would like to highlight. And all of this was being done under the Pero System umbrella. Pero Systems was sold off to Dell. Those mergers and acquisitions happen in the world. That's a normal business process. And in the process of that merger and acquisition, the good work that was done sort of got lost somewhere. But anyway, that's something that we just wanted to bring it up. Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Okay. So later on, the entire case study was published in eHealth. We'll share the link with all of you. You can, in your time, you can go through it. There's a lot you can see how things has happened and the entire story, much more incidents and how things we actually took from as is to be. And it actually became a role model, which so far, I don't think any other hospital has achieved across India. So we'll share that. Please read it. This is really nice to go through it. This was a message we received from Dr. Parvez Ahmed, who was CEO MD Max Healthcare at the time and one of the key supporter of digitization and making this entire thing work. So he was actually, I would say, leader of the change from the hospital itself. So unless you have my only stake here is like unless you have your client, also involved and willing and adapting to the change, right? Things cannot work. So there is always a reluctance. So he was from the Mac side, he was the driver of the entire change. So this is a message that he has, and we really liked working with him. Arun, can we go to the next slide? I think that was the last. So this is all about the Max case study. It's open. Anything you want to know or share any similar experience, we would also love to hear that.
Thank you, Komal, for that nice presentation and that example, that transformation that happened in Max. I think one key point is like when it comes to change, there will be always resistance from people don't want to change, and whenever that process or that change comes, people resist. And you told how you with that example, like changing the password, how you overcome it. So, Mike, we also we also have HIS and EHR. My question is for data, not only the process will simplify everything. Regarding data retrieval, how did it manage? Whether you are using the similar system for all the centers? Suppose if I am doing a research and I want to get the data, how is the data retrieval process done there?
So, Shilal, if I get your question right, it's like, was it the same system used across multiple hospital chain, and if it is distributed research center,
even for the different specialties, like there are many specialties where they use the same interface for say entering data, so that when we want to retrieve for some other purpose, it was easy.
So for that one, in this scenario, it was the same system, HIS, to begin with. And then later on, we added MIS, which used to extract data from this system and give management reports. So if you are doing a research, there can be a system on the top of the HIS or EHR which you are using, and can help you write the reports that can be used for clinical purposes.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
But as long as the system are standardized, right? As long as the systems can interface and transfer data between it, generating a report is not a big deal. But the problem is how to make them interoperable, how to make them talk to each other. So tomorrow, if your research is within your institute, it may be easier. But what if you are doing research with another medical college, right? So the point is, right now, the system is in isolation. Everybody has their own set of language. They don't understand each other. That is where the issue comes. That is where the problem lies.
Yeah.
So just to add on to that, so different specialties you mentioned. So in Vista, when the clinical notes were being entered or the orders were being entered for different specialties, so there were templates. So every specialty had its own template. And that is how, so it was the same system, but different template. So every specialty can pull out their own template and start filling it up. So, the case history formats are different, as you know. So this was designed like that. The second thing was that, you had multiple, or they had multiple systems like the HIS, EHR, the lab system, pharmacy system, radiology system, etc., etc. So all of that was interfaced using standardized interfaces. In those days, we used HL7 and ICOM for it. Today, of course, the world has moved to FHIR, and FHIR is the new standard. But at that time, it was HL7 2.x. So all interfaces were HL7.
And regarding this, like in OP and IP care facilities. So OP will be maybe maximum number of patients will be coming and going. So it will be much more crowded compared to an IP facility. So for inpatient in a ward, they can they will get enough time to enter data. Like, so how you manage that? The IP and this OP services, how you manage them?
So I'll not answer specific to Max, but usually, what you do is you create templates again for the outpatient, and these are templates where you will have drop downs and favorites for every doctor. So every specialty has a certain number of favorites. So, those are the 10 most used diagnoses, 10 most used procedures, 10 most used drugs, 10 most used lab tests. So you configure it accordingly. And that is why, Komal was talking about the login ID. If you're logging in through your own login ID, then you'll get all your favorites. You'll get all your masters. If you're not logging in through your own ID, you're logging in through somebody else's ID, then you're not getting your masters, you're not getting your own favorites, and you're not getting your own data of the past. So your patient, your practice, your data. So the system knows you and will provide you the subset of the data that is your data. So, that's how it is supposed to be managed. And, largely that is what was done in the case study that we presented.
Okay, so thank you.
Questions, anyone?
So if there are no questions, I'll sort of say something about the standards. This was one of the first few systems in India that had built-in standards way before, Government of India got into standardization in terms of, the EHR standards and the metadata standards and now NDHP. This was well before that. And this was one of the first few that had ICD-10 for diagnosis. There was CPT, which is an American standard, because India didn't have any. So, CPT was adopted for the procedures, and LOINC was adopted for the lab. And, nowadays, many people say, is LOINC going to be possible for the lab? Well, there is a working system. I mean, it was designed for LOINC even at that point in time. And for radiology, it was all DICOM. And so, it was a completely standardized system. People talk about now, when I sort of sit on the other side from a policy table, people say, is it even possible in India? Well, I just say 10 years ago, we did it, It was all a standardized system. Why is it not going to be possible today when the technology has moved, leaps and bounds? So it was a system which had all kinds of privacy and security built in. It had all kinds of, single sign-on built in. So you didn't have to sort of sign in to different systems. So, it had all that built in. So you had all those things built in, which today people are sort of struggling and saying whether, it's even possible. So it was a completely standardized system, way ahead of its time, of course. So, which is something we, all of us who are working on it, never realized that we are at least, 10 years ahead of our time. maybe more.
Just to add on what Dr. Pankaj said, it was also the first system where we actually implement patient ID, right? The patient can actually pick up their records and walk in anywhere. They don't even have to pick up their records. So if they just give their enrollment phone number or identification, they are actually seen across the max. So that it's that they get an IP treatment here, they can go to OP in another state. It is seamless. They don't have to carry the records. The entire records were actually managed by the system. So that kind of flexibility and reliability was given to their patient, where patient was also happy, right? So those things were also the first of its kind. Like I still see people struggling with facility IDs, patient ID, identifiers, master data. It was we just did it, not not knowing like what we are doing. It's like these are basics. This should be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Komal. Good point you raised, because facility ID, again, just like, patient ID, the facility ID. So this was a multi-facility system. And there were facility IDs, and then you had institutes within the same facility. So there's an institute of eye, there's an institute of cardiology, which is sort of run. It's a department, but it's run as a separate entity by itself. So you had to service all of those institutes also. So so we had facility registry. We did facility registry without thinking that we are doing a facility registry. And similarly, doctors registry. So we had all kinds of doctors. So doctors on permanent roles, doctors as consultants, doctors as visiting faculty, doctors as visiting, visiting doctors who are coming only for a procedure, and things like that. So you had to have privacy and security built for all these different roles. And then there were things like nurse having a different privileges in the night as compared to during the day, because during the night the physician is not there, so the nurse assumes a lot of privileges that he or she does not enjoy during the day. Now all those privacy and security was built into the system. So the doctors registry that we talk about, it existed 10 years back.
Okay, any other questions?
So if no other questions, are we good to close? Because we are already at, I know we have taken like 15 extra minutes today. So.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll wind up.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.